everyone, my name is Miranda Craig, and for my Module 4 project, I'll be looking at how youth actually learn the processes that we're trying to implement to teach them about leadership. So we have all of these strategies, whether it be mentoring, networking, volunteering with them, but if we don't have a good understanding about how they're actually absorbing this information and the things that are necessary for them to learn, then all of those awesome techniques are kind of useless. So I figured that my approach would be from the other end, looking at how youth can learn leadership and helping us to understand that so that we're more aware of the ways in which we're delivering these methods of education. So why is this important? Like I said, we have all of these different varieties of ways to instruct young adults on how to become leaders, how to better understand leadership and different theories within. But that doesn't mean anything if we aren't using the right techniques for the right audience. And so my question to challenge us is kind of consider what would happen if we first considered how they approach grasping the concept of leadership instead of us just thinking, we'll create lesson plans for each kind of activity, but like I said, at first we have to understand how exactly the youth that we're teaching or guiding are going to learn in the first place. So objectives for this presentation are to examine the dimensions of leadership development in which youth learn this complex concept, to look at some scenarios through which this process can occur, and then we'll also look at specific examples in which leadership development takes place through interpersonal interaction. So the 5 dimensions of leadership outlined in our course text are leadership information, leadership attitude, communication, decision-making, and stress management. So the authors of our text came up with this framework for guiding adults who engage with teenagers so that they can better understand the development process for the youth that they're in front of. So leadership information is the first and ever existent dimension found in leadership development stages. So with sources of information as plentiful as the air that we breathe, it's imperative that the information provided to the youth is accurate and attractive to the audience. So that meaning that the information should be tailored to the audience just as one would tailor marketing tactics to an intended buyer. So this eases the process of acceptance but also retention of the information presented. It's just as important, however, that the information be easily digestible for the team. So not anything that's over their head, nothing too full of jargon or vernacular, which we learn a lot about through research writing in our educational processes. So like I said, the information needs to be plenty, but it needs to be attractive, it needs to be valid, and it needs to be able to be easily understood by the youth that we're presenting it to. The second is leadership attitude. Leadership attitudes and the attitudes about oneself are learned and they're very easily influenced. So the way a teen thinks of themselves determines their disposition to lead and their potential. So the leadership attitude a youth has is a direct result of the instruction and influence of those that they consider important in their life. And it can be altered directly through the experiences that they have. So it's important that as we guide leaders, or young leaders rather, that we contribute to a positive attitude of themselves, because if they can't see themselves as a leader because of the experiences or the things that they've been told, it's going to be pretty difficult for them to execute positive leadership behavior. The third dimension is the exchange of thoughts, messages, and information, otherwise known easily as communication. So people influence each other through this process day in and day out, whether it be through digital, verbal, or nonverbal messages. This complex art form does require intentional skill, and it is critical for leaders to be able to do effectively. So if adolescents are, one, communicated with efficiently, then they can, two, communicate with others as a leader effectively. When teaching youth in a leadership setting, it is important to identify and execute 3 things. So we've got sending, receiving, and responding to a message. It's important when conveying leadership development lessons that the instructor display upon the youth an example of good and clear communication so that they can set an example for effective and positive communication when it does come from that youth leader. So it's a constant exchange through verbal or nonverbal messages, and it is instrumental in breaking those barriers because if a youth is able to communicate well, it's gonna make challenges of working with diverse groups of people, working with diverse cultures, a lot easier if they're able to not only receive messages well, but also respond to them appropriately. So perhaps the action at the foundation of all that is leadership is decision making. It affects everyone involved, and it's the way a child or teen approaches decision making that creates a large impact on whether the leader is a transactional leader or a transformational leader in their strategies. So the process, or the ability rather, to approach decision making strategically and logically and maturely could dictate if someone's a transactional leader who is kind of just out for themselves, and it's kind of a you scratch your back, I'll scratch mine, and then we'll help each other. Or if they're able to make decisions well with everyone in mind, then they can set themselves up to be a really, really positive, really influential, transformational leader in which they're not only accomplishing tasks, but they're contributing to the development of their peers and building relationships. So we obviously always want someone to be a transformational leader. One way that I think of a transactional leader is kind of like a bank, like you put in deposits and you take out withdrawals, but that's not what we want in our leaders. We want to train our youth to be people of substance, of character, to be people of compassion. And so the step-by-step process that's illustrated on this slide kind of shows you how one would go through the decision-making process logically. It was determined by Raffia, von Winterfeld, and Edwards, and these 5 steps are representative of most models of decision-making and leadership. So list the possible alternatives. 2, identify potential consequences and what may happen because of a decision. Assess the probability of said consequences happening. Assess the relative impact. So is this consequence worth the gain that we're going to get from this decision, or is it not? And then evaluate potential impacts. How is this going to impact my team's progression? How is it going to impact relationships? And all the factors that are so vital to effective teamwork. The 5th dimension is stress management and how adolescents react to and deal with stress in their lives. So stress, often looked at as a negativity when present, should be approached as a positive thing. Each youth will handle stress differently, but when teaching them about leadership, it's important that we equip them to take this challenge on in a healthy and strategic manner, so as to prevent irrational behavior and in turn irrational leadership. So it's kind of looking at how do we manage a virtually unidentifiable problem. You can't really define stress explicitly because it's different for everyone, and so with that, everyone's going to deal with it differently. That's what we have to keep in mind, that stress is a reality and it's okay. It's just more important that we train our youth and that our youth know that there are ways of coping with stress in a strategic and positive way. Because if someone can't handle a stress in their own life, we can't expect them to effectively lead a team in which multiple stressors will be factored in, whether it be their teammates' stress in their personal life or stresses that arise in the workplace or the organizational setting. So leadership interactions are the opportunities where we can put into work the knowledge we've gained regarding how youth learn leadership. So through these social interactions, we as instructors, if you will, can make either a positive or negative impact on leadership development in young adults. So the authors of our course text argue that the interactions we are about to examine are often missed opportunities for adults to contribute to this type of development in youth. They are opportunities that span across families, communities, school, and workplace. And so as an instructor, this is kind of the point in the presentation where we're able to say, okay, we now know how youth learn leadership. How can we specifically implement strategies to teach them what leadership is, but also to develop in them leadership skills?
Look at this guy. What are you gonna do, kid? Go home. It's hopeless. Yeah, dude, do something with your life. Leave. You're looking Give it up.
So, activities provide real life situations in which children can put to the test the skills they've witnessed from others. Learning by doing is considered experiential and can be found in many of the youth agricultural programs and organizations that my peers are examining for this course. Exposure to a diverse array of people and activities enables the youth to test their skills in several environments. Informal activities in settings such as chores at the home amongst siblings also contribute to one's ability to practice communicating, making decisions amongst others, and managing the stress that may arise from having a list of tasks to complete. The next video is one that we are all familiar with and exemplifies an activity in which all 5 dimensions of leadership development are present and useful. It also serves as an example of an idea that a community can implement to foster leadership growth.
Big Event is a day where all Aggies at Texas A&M University come together and we basically lend a helping hand to our community.
So in the morning we show up to the opening ceremony, and this is one of the coolest parts of the day because you see at least 10,000 students in Kyle Field Plaza, and seeing the president, seeing Jimbo Fisher today give an incredible speech.
And everything I ever see at A&M is about togetherness, it's about family, and it's about unity. And it just reinforces to me that I made the right choice to come to A&M. I promise you that.
After the opening ceremony, we go to our different job sites and we get to serve doing manual labor, and we could be painting or we could be raking leaves.
This definitely is probably one of our biggest ways to kind of support our Aggie values of selfless service.
Kind of cherish this. We all as a group get to work together and kind of just give back everything, because we take everything for granted. You know, we have these things and some people don't have them, so we go out and just, you know, try to help as much as we can.
Learning experiences offer an avenue for formalized curriculum delivery focused on leadership development. Educational programs are designed specifically to provide leadership information, to encourage youth to self-reflect, and to improve their current leadership skills. Lectures, small group activities, and large group collaborations are all ideas one can use to deliver these kinds of leadership learning experiences. Indirect learning experiences are those that contribute to leadership development but do not explicitly teach about it. The last video we will look at combines community and learning experiences and highlights a church internship program in which one's intrapersonal and interpersonal skills are often put to the test.
Interns is a life development program to build, equip, and mobilize leaders with a biblical worldview and position them for a life of influence. It features interactive classes, challenging discussion, and in-depth Bible teaching.
Interns gave me a full leadership toolbox that I can utilize not only at church, but in the workplace and even in parenting. I learned that in Christ, I have the power to impact the culture and atmosphere wherever I am.
There's 2 options to choose from: part-time on Monday nights or full-time Monday nights and Tuesday morning and afternoon. Weekly classes start September 22nd. To register or for more info, talk to Director Jen Blackwood at the Interns Info Table by Guest Services.
With that, my presentation for Module 4 concludes. We have looked at the 5 different dimensions that are present in leadership development, which also help us understand how to address and how to deliver the several and incredible variety of ways to teach people about leadership. But like I said in the beginning, it's important to understand how these youth learn so that we can then take those social interactions that we looked at in the second half of the presentation and make the most of them, and being mindful of not missing opportunities to not only share leadership information and leadership development curricula, but also engaging directly with students and with youth through leadership development activities.